I'd like to call this meeting of the Public Works Public Safety Committee to order. Got 3 items before our committee today, but before I get started, I wanted to, the Council Chair, Kathy Lehman, asked if I would read an announcement, and that's today the city's testing a new software that will manage all of the City Council's material. For that reason, we have built an extra 5 minutes between each committee meeting to allow time for video encoders to stop and start again. It is located in BTV 10. We also have extra staff present today, as well as our consultant who is helping with the project. Please have patience. This is a big change and will result in a much improved overall experience for the public as well as staff and council. The plan is to have a short presentation on March 24th demonstrating the new software. Thanks. So our first item, joining me on the committee is Michael Lillquist and Jack Weiss. And the first issue before us today is an ordinance amending Bellingham's Municipal Code 15.08 to create a new service classification and rate for bulk water filling station.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. Just as Council Chair Borneman mentioned, this is related to a rate within the water utility and does require an amendment to the BMC. The city provides bulk water at locations throughout the city. This is typically for contractors or construction work where people need to get water to fill up a water truck or something to that effect. The stations, we put some new stations in that now have the ability to use a PIN, a personal identification number, so that folks would have an account. They would then be billed on volume only. There's no base rate because it's very intermittent. People go out and fill up their trucks as needed. They would be billed for the volume used. But it does require an amendment to the BMC. The volume charge that staff is proposing would be the same rate as for irrigation. So it's a little bit higher volume rate than you would typically pay as a resident or a commercial that has also a base fee, because there is no base fee to this. It's volume only. So this does take action. Staff is recommending that that council pass the ordinance to make this change. Eric's here to answer any questions that you might have about the program or the reason for recommending the rate that we have.
Okay, thank you, Ted. Any questions? Jack?
So maybe this is for Eric. With the irrigation fee it looks like it's substantially larger than the other fees for residential use or commercial use. Is that because we have no base fee for irrigation, or is there additional infrastructure costs associated with that?
That's a good question. For a typical City of Bellingham customer, a commercial customer or a residential customer with an irrigation meter, they would pay both the base rate charge for that meter plus the irrigation volume charge. The irrigation volume charge is a higher cost than residential water in an effort to discourage, to some extent, the use of water for irrigation purposes. In this case, with the bulk watering rate, since the use is largely intermittent and may occur once or twice a month, but certainly not with a great deal of regularity, we need a dollar number to charge for that. We chose the irrigation rate just for simplicity purposes more than anything.
Okay. It's leading to another question I have about the bulk water filling stations. How much did those end up costing per station for us, and are we trying to recoup the capitalization of that?
So the 4 stations in total were around $67,000 to install all 4 of them. There are 2 of them are currently online. The other 2 will come online over the next year or so. We are not attempting to recover a one-for-one cost for the cost of the installation of that individual meter. In the same way that the meter installations throughout the city are being borne by all water customers, this meter installation is more expensive than others, but it is being spread throughout the cost of the utility as a whole.
Okay, I'm just wondering if we're subsidizing this particular use, overall? And it sounds like we sort of are, but we're sort of getting some recouping into the structure.
Over the long term, that since these customers will be paying a significantly higher cost than a standard customer, then that is correct over the very long term. But these particular installations are much more expensive than a typical water meter to be installed because of the complications with providing power and some other equipment associated with them. It's much more expensive to install the bulk metering stations. Previously, though, what was happening is that customers would pay a flat rate and simply fill out of a hydrant that had a meter onto it. And so it was the other way around. Now they're going to be paying a much higher rate than a normal customer and paying for each gallon of use rather than a flat rate.
Okay. Move to recommend passage of the ordinance.
Second.
Yes, Michael?
You said, excuse me, Eric, you said that the previous rate was a flat rate. I'd like to get some kind of understanding of whether under the new rate structure it'll be an increase or about the same for users. And going with that, we're charging per cubic feet for an average water truck. You know, are they filling up 1,000 cubic feet, 100 cubic feet? What is the load?
It varies from size to size, but as is typical with our other customers, they pay the base rate based on 100 cubic feet. So if they fill a truck and it's got 98 cubic feet in the truck, we're going to bill them for the consumption rate, which is 100 cubic feet. So they're going to pay the base charge no matter what. Comparison to the flat rate, it's a substantial increase in the cost for that water for those customers. It is a very small number of customers. We have about 60 to 70 customers registered to use those hydrant stations, so it's a pretty small number of users throughout the city, but it is a substantial increase in the cost for them to be using this water on a per gallon 100 cubic foot basis.
Thank you. This is interesting because this is now the fourth or fifth example recently where the city council has agreed, I think we probably will agree, to a substantial increase in the fee, and yet it still, as Jack answered Jack's question, still doesn't quite actually cover our costs. So even though we're asking the users to step up, the city is still carrying those costs. We're still providing as a general service as well.
But if I understood correctly, though, it sounds like over the long run, it will recoup its cost, unlike certain other services like boat inspection that will not recoup. But this one, because of the added cost, will recoup its cost over time. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is, and if I could maybe add one point too, we also use these facilities. So when our sweepers are out or when our Vector trucks are out, we use these facilities as well. And you know, anytime you're filling up a truck, I mean, safety is the primary concern, to make sure that we have the proper backflow prevention, to make sure that there's nothing happening to the system by these folks filling up throughout the distribution system. So we use them, but they're a little bit more expensive. As Eric pointed out, we will recoup our costs over the very long term. So we should keep that in mind, but it's also additional facilities for our folks to fill up at safely so that they don't have to go back to the shop. They can fill out in the area when we're sweeping or using our Vector trucks.
Any other questions? All those in favor of recommended approval tonight, answer aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will recommend approval.
And I was going to request that we give just the briefest update at some point, either now or at the end of the committee, on where we're at in our residential water metering program.
Why don't we do it?
Do it right now? Okay.
So just on those same lines, in terms of the metering project, this next 2 weeks is a pretty important milestone for the city. Starting this Friday and next Friday, 3,800 customers within the city of Bellingham will be receiving their first new bill based on meter consumption for consumption from January through February. We've had a number of phone calls over the last 2 weeks asking from folks who are in the process of being converted, asking where their bills are, their flat rate bills, and that's there's a bit of a delay there going from the flat rate bill process to the metered bill process, but those will be issued starting this Friday and next Friday. So 3,800 customers coming onto a metered bill. With that, we've observed a couple of things. Of those 3,800, 20 have been observed to have a high consumption. And we are fairly certain that those are related to leaks on the customer side of the meter. We are certain of that because we can see that the meter is constantly turning or constantly reading water flow throughout a 24-hour period. We've reached out to those customers today or tomorrow with a letter identifying that they probably have a leak in their system and that that they need to get that fixed. So that's a pretty big milestone, something for folks to keep an eye on over the next 2 weeks.
So with that coming in line with the new bills, if people have questions, concerns, who do they direct the calls to?
The first phone call.
Because we couldn't.
That's right.
Council
And
won't be
the
able
first
to.
phone call should go to the city finance department. I don't have that number on the top of my head, but
Okay.
just to the finance utility billing office, and they'll be able to answer the majority of questions related to the bill.
Okay, thanks. 'Cause I'm sure we're going to get some questions, and so we go to finance first and then.
Yeah, direct them to utility billing in the finance department.
778-8036.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Gene. What?
I'm just reading what it's on the paper. That's Brian's.
What is the number, Brian?
No.
778-8010.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Brian.
Yeah. Okay. So then I guess our next item then is the Whatcom Falls water filtration plant pretreatment update.
Excellent, thank you. This item is for information only, as the committee may recall. The council recently approved a modification to the water system plan to include the pretreatment facility up at the water treatment plant. That plan has been approved by both the City Council and the Department of Health, and we are in the process. We solicited RFQs for design engineers to come in and do the preliminary engineering work on that. And at this point, we wanted to give just a brief update on where we're at in that process, because it is a significant project, and we wanted to make sure council knew where we were. So,
Thanks, Ted. Again, Eric Johnston, Public Works. While not normally brought to City Council with contracts of this nature, we just wanted to give you a heads up that this is ongoing. This is a pretty significant project, as Ted mentioned. It was included in the 2014 budget. The funding for the project was also included in the rate study and the program rate increases that were approved by the council in the fall of 2012. So this is certainly not a new project. This is one that's been talked about for some time. We're just moving forward now with the preliminary design engineering, which is phase one. This initial phase one contract covers the siting assessment, the pre-design, and the permitting associated with the project. It also covers a review of some of the infrastructure associated with the Whatcom Falls treatment plant and a review of the condition of the pipeline that conveys raw water or untreated water from Whatcom Falls down into the industrial area, which ties well into the waterfront master planning project that we're doing now. The purpose of the project is to respond to and plan for long-term protection of our drinking water source. It's to add a pretreatment system to a water treatment plant that currently does not have one. I noticed when I came to work for the City of Bellingham that the treatment plant at Whatcom Falls is a carbon copy of the treatment plant for the City of Anacortes, except for the pretreatment system. And so this will add a pretreatment system to a plant that does not have one. The purpose of that will be to remove organic material from the water supply, which improves the filter performance and lowers the levels of required disinfection products needed to be added to the system. That in turn reduces the amount of trihalomethanes and other chemicals which have the potential to be a negative impact on human health. So we're trying to keep an eye on that, and it's not a problem now. We don't see it as a major issue today, but we want to put the systems in place that prevent that from becoming a problem in the future. We are in framing the project for the next several years, setting forth that the decisions on the project will be made using a triple bottom line plus train of thought, keeping the ideas of the City Council goals for sustainability and long-term use of the systems in place, and that will allow us to keep those systems in place for a very long time. As I mentioned, this is a multi-year project. Phase one will be this year. Phase two of the design engineering will be done next year, with construction scheduled for 2016, with the anticipated startup date being the summer of 2017. And the total cost of the project will depend on the sizing and some of the preliminary engineering work we're doing this year, which should be in the range of $15 to $20 million. So again, this is more information only. We are still negotiating the contract with the selected consultant. Would anticipate executing that contract at the staff level in the next coming weeks.
Okay. Michael, you got a question?
I had some somewhat important questions, but what you just said makes me think I have a far, far more important question. When we approved the rate structure, this facility was anticipated, and it was actually supposed to be built this year, not the following year. That was my, I thought, important question. But you just said $15 to $20 million. The prior estimates were $11 million. That is a substantial increase, and A, I'd like an explanation for that, and B, if that is an increase, we adopted a rate structure assuming far lower costs. how can this be paid for, or am I misunderstanding something?
No, you are correct, Mr. Lilliquist, that the pre-treatment function alone was in that $11 to $15 million range. What this scope anticipates is other improvements that are necessary as well, which would be included into the cost of that project at the appropriate point. The cost of all of those were included in the rate study, although the pre-treatment function itself was called out as a specific element of that project because of the single large dollar value. Would anticipate that we would need to see some other improvements at the screen house, as well as the pipelines conveying some of the water from the lake to the treatment plant, or from the treatment plant down to the industrial area. Put that number out there at the $15-20 million range to capture the full range of improvements that might be moved forward.
But in terms of the diffused air filtration system, has that cost estimate gone up or changed substantially?
No, it is not.
Okay. So then going back to the smaller question, when we approved the rate structure, it really was estimating and design engineering last year and getting construction this year. So it seems like we're already starting 12 months behind schedule. Is that a fair estimate or characterization?
My recollection was that the project was anticipated to start in the 2013-2014 timeframe. We did start with the selection process in the fall of 2013, but moving forward with the construction, the schedule was a 2015-2016 construction window. So
I really do remember 2014 year where there was a $10.4 million charge. So
Yeah,
I'm thinking there's a schedule slip here.
I always had it in 15-16. We always anticipated a revenue bond in 15. But we can go back and look at it. Maybe there's a document that showed it in 14. It certainly wasn't my anticipation because we couldn't start on it until we had the water system plan approved.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thanks. Our next item is an interlocal agreement between the City of Bellingham and Whatcom Council of Governments to help fund the Whatcom Smart Trips program.
Thank you. This is a program that the city's been funding for several years now. Total interlocal amount is for $25,000. That's $25,000 that's actually in the non-departmental budget, meaning it's allocated throughout the city. So it's not in the Public Works budget alone. It's paid for by all of the funds throughout the city through an allocation model. We work very closely with the Council of Governments on commute trip reductions. This is the education component of much of what we're doing in terms of non-motorized and trying to get the shift from single occupancy vehicles to transit, pedestrian, and bicycle modes. There has been a decrease in the program at the Council of Governments due to some loss of state funding. They've downsized their program. We had a bit of a presentation about this at the end of last year, at the end of 2013. The city's contribution is remaining at the $25,000 level, and that's what this interlocal commitment is for. Kim Brown is here, our transportation option coordinator. If you have any questions about the program itself, we can certainly go into detail. Basically, this is a continuation of the effort from the last several years now. And we would be, the action is we'd be requesting authorization for the mayor to enter into this interlocal agreement.
Michael?
I move that we recommend approval to authorize this contract.
Okay. And I will second that. And you have no questions?
Terry, can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Ted, does the county participate or not? You know, Kim? Okay.
At this point, the funding partners are the city and then WTA. Their contribution is through staff, so it's an in-kind contribution. Then the other funding comes from state and federal. Actually, no state funding in 2014, just federal grant.
But we're going to be pretty much the only people putting money. So will the ride share then be limited to?
You know, most of the program, the Smart Trip program, is focused in the Bellingham area. There are some programs that are provided out into the county, but the rationale for that and the city funding that portion of those programs are that those commuters are coming into the city of Bellingham to the employment center and retail center, and those reduced trips help us even if the origin is out in the county. So you know, staff supportive of this program. We continue to work with the COG to make sure that it's a streamlined program and that it's being run as efficiently as possible. Last year, as I mentioned, they reduced staff, they reduced the amount of time being spent on this over at the COG at the staff level, and we support this $25,000 funding level.
Okay. So I guess we'll have the motion and second. All those in favor of recommending the full council authorization, answer aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No?
Okay. We will recommend approval tonight and note the dissension. So that ends the issues before Public Works, Public Safety Committee. And so the next committee up is Planning.